Welcome back from lunch. I was saying I was glad the sun had finally come out, so it's the perfect time to come back inside in the dark room, but you can at least see peaks of the sun out there. We'll now begin our third panel of the conference. We have a number of fascinating multi-investigator projects to hear from right now, but let me first introduce my colleague, Julia Eliashar. Professor Eliashar is here in the Department of Anthropology at UC Irvine, where she also sits on the academic advisory board of the Institute for Money, Technology, and Financial Inclusion. She's an anthropologist of economy and markets who's done a lot of work also thinking about NGOs and finance and financialization, doing research in Cairo, Egypt, and in Slovenia, among other places. So without any further ado, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone. So we don't lose much time, let's just jump right in. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. The name of our panel right now is Mobile Money's Agency in Everyday Behavior and Practices. Our first paper, with the title of Evolving Participatory Relationships for Uplifting Urban Poor Rickshaw Pullers, will be presented by the Mani Nandi and Deepti Casey. I think only Mani will be presenting. Yes, and they're Mani is from the University of Delhi, and Deepti is from the Center for Microfinance at IFMR Research. Please. Yeah. So we'll continue as we were for the morning. There'll be 20 minutes of presentation.
Thank you, Julia. Very good afternoon to all of you. It gives me great pleasure to be here presenting my third study. It has been an amazing experience for me from my first study to today's study, which with my co-researcher Deepti from Center for Microfinance, we are working on the study. I would like to take you through the path we have traveled so far in our efforts to back the unbanked rickshaw pullers in Delhi. Rickshaw pullers is a strong group of marginalized urban poor migrants and are bankable in terms of their saving potential, as documented in an earlier IMTFI study. 95% depend on informal saving methods due to lack of KYC norms, which act as a barrier to banking them. Using an unorthodox route to bank these pullers through social activism, hand-holding support, and financial education, it was aimed to use the Indian government's UID Aadhaar cards, which is a unique identification scheme expected to be a game changer in the financial inclusion scenario in India. Research strategy was three-pronged. At the first level, social mobilization of pullers, obtaining them UID Aadhaar cards, and at the third level, to link them with mobile banking accounts. The sample area is an illegal slum settlement with many clusters of rickshaw pullers living in central Delhi. Our target population is drawn from 2 clusters of pullers from Madhya Pradesh. As we met the pullers during a field survey in the beginning of the phase, it became very clear to us that their willingness to participate depended on our demonstrating to them in actually getting them bank accounts and UID cards first. At the level of social mobilization stage, we sensed and faced utter disbelief, cynicism, distrust, and lack of enthusiasm for participating in the project by the rickshaw pullers. This stemmed from 4 critical reasons. 1, earlier they were misled by some groups or organizations which promised them to get a bank account and UID cards. 2, pullers' singular focus during the migratory period is to maximize their earnings. 3, they queried about the monetary and non-monetary costs in getting a bank account. 4, they confessed that their willingness to participate in this project is subject to our demonstrating to them in getting UID cards and bank accounts for some of them initially first. Puller's mindset raised questions in our minds and forced us to think about of a change of strategy towards our goal. Realizing we faced a chicken first or egg first situation, we changed the planned route from social mobilization to getting bank accounts first. Therefore, changing the strategy, we focused on getting the bank accounts first to overcome their reservations. To start with, 6 pullers with voters' ID of their states were mobilized and linked with the State Bank of India's mobile banking saving account. This was done at an average time of 5 and 6 days for social mobilization and bank linkage respectively. We then had to push the eco-cart to get the accounts activated. At present, normal time is 2 weeks for account activation, but it took 61 days to activate these 6 accounts compared to the same day account activation time nearly 1.5 years ago. Next, when the first puller attempted to deposit on the 59th day, his transaction failed due to a technical glitch. That is, his account had not migrated to the State Bank of India's core banking solution platform. Mobile banking account was chosen because of 2 reasons. It requires minimal KYC norms, and most pullers own a mobile phone. However, we experienced certain concerns at several steps. For instance, at the only State Bank of India eco-counter in the sampled area, lack of training and lack of pro-poor sensitivity of the CSP were revealing. Also, the CSP's primary focus was on the remittance product and not on the saving product. More revealing was at the BC level, where the puller's precious time was considerably spent on account opening day. This was because the CSP, who was 2 months old agent, was trained by the eco officials on account opening formalities on the spot on the same day at the ICICI eco counter. ICICI is a private bank. Curiously enough, account-related SMS alerts were found to be in English. Server connectivity problems delayed receipt of the messages about the first deposit made. Besides, handsets with one telecom operator were found to be receiving messages promptly. Last but not the least, ECO's back-end operations for the saving product was found to be weak due to its spotlight on remittance product, which has become a cash cow for the company. This is compounded by the State Bank of India's delays in verification of the KYC norms and synchronization of accounts with their CBS platform. Irritants and pain points at different levels in the State Bank of India Eco Mobile Banking rail reminded us of a football game. So we changed the track towards mobile banking the pullers through the private bank ICICI Eco's route, because ICICI offers a KYC-free Apna savings account requiring a photo only and permits a maximum cash balance of INR 50,000. 8 pullers' accounts were opened and activated immediately. First day, 3 pullers deposited $2 each. Subsequently, the pullers' cart was pushed and we faced post-delivery blues with a number of queries and doubts, and the pullers were dithering to deposit. In terms of social mobilization of pullers, after opening mobile banking accounts, new faces approached, inclined to volunteer, and our social mobilization was like these ants gathering food particle by particle. We enlisted 75 pullers, finalized 30, and 45 pullers are waiting in the wings to participate, depending on our progress in UID and bank account opening. Going back to know what kind of post-purchase anxiety was exhibited by the pullers, some of the pullers' responses reflect their concerns. 1, the BC counter is only a shop and does not resemble an impressive bank, and it's a poor cousin to the bank. 2, I've not heard about ECO, but I know about the branded bank. 3, bank does not charge for deposits and withdrawals, but why should the ECO shop charge us if we are going to be saving there? 4, bank gives us ATM cards, but the ECO shop did not offer ATM facility. In the first week after opening mobile banking accounts, gently encouraging the pullers to deposit in the accounts, the pendulum seemed to swing towards the informal storing practices for various reasons. 1, be it for current consumption needs or for meeting the ongoing festival expenses, pullers prefer to store money with the tekadar, who is a rickshaw contractor, or prefer to store money with themselves. 2, when money had to be sent home through a fellow villager, or to repay a sudden debt incurred due to gambling, a pastime in the pullers' slum settlement in Delhi, depositing in the account was far from their minds. Lastly, and importantly, their focus in earning the whole day left them with no time to go that extra bit to the ECO counter. Therefore, storing with the tikadar at their doorstep was stated to be convenient by them. Were there any elementary triggers that seem at the moment to tilt the scales towards on-the-spot pullers' mobile bank with a tikadar in the slum settlement? 3 basic triggers are visible. 1, brand recognition about the bank is strong, but uncertainty about the BC or the sub-agent as against the time-tested tikadar was known to them. 2, ECO counter is not on their route to work as against the easily available services of tikadar at their place of stay. 3, tikadar does not charge any transaction fees, while ECO shop charges for transactions. While concerns are there, our experience has been like going on a merry-go-round so far in our journey. Getting the pullers UID enabled started with enrolling 3 pullers with a voter's ID of the state. However, for other homeless pullers, a prerequisite of getting an Aadhaar card was to get an introducer who will act as a guarantor. Not wanting to seek the help of any NGO acting as an introducer, I, as a principal investigator stationed in New Delhi, had to become an introducer. By pushing the UID card from the top levels, I enrolled on 6 September, received the Aadhaar number on 15th October, then completed other formalities on 26 October, but the UID registrar from Central Delhi wanted a certificate from my employer, which I submitted on 9th November, but the UID introducer status is unknown till today. Finally, we say thank you for your attention and end with the next 3 slides to let you know our unsaid thoughts in our efforts so far. Thank you so much, and I want to thank Bill, Jenny, and the rest of the IMTFI family. Thank you.
Okay. Bill, I just want to check something here. We'll move on to, we have more time, so let's continue on. Okay, and then we'll take all the questions. I just note that we have in Surfit a little bit of time here that is being kindly transferred, the minute transfers to the collective good of the panel. So we have our next paper.
We were told only 15 minutes, so be prepared for 15 minutes.
Okay, but you'll get it for the questions and discussion. Okay, so our next paper is called Making Sense of, can you hear me back there? Is it on? Okay. Making Sense of Mobile Money in Urban Ghana, Personal Business, Social, and Financial Inclusion Prospects. And so our speaker will be Vivian Jukoto from Virginia Commonwealth University and Elizabeth Appiah from Pentecost University College. Please.
Good afternoon. I'll give you a minute to look at some of the interesting quotes that we collected as part of the qualitative part of the study. These are thoughts that people had and responded to our questions. Have you heard about mobile money? Have you used mobile money? What do you think about mobile money? And let me show you some of my favorites. So up there you have, as for me, I prefer cash. That was a typical response. Then you had, I don't trust it. I'll use it when others do. What if I lose my phone? We did have some users. So you have, life is now easy with Tigo Cash, which actually is a slogan from Tigo at Telco. Everybody knows that we do not use it here. That was in a market. It's for rich people. There is no way you can convince a Kwewu woman not to use cash. Kwewu women dominate the market. And my personal favorite, it's 666, and she declined to say anything further because she didn't want to go into a religious discussion, but she just thought that, mobile money was demonic and didn't want to have anything to do with that at all. Okay. So, what's the issue here? The issue is that mobile money uptake in Ghana has been relatively low since its introduction about 3 years ago. It hasn't resembled Kenya at all, and so the question has been why. This, in a part, was a follow-up study in sorts to work that I did with Dr. Mensah last year, but we added some additional dimensions to our work. Oops, what did I do? And the research goals were to explore personal, business, social, and financial inclusion prospect of mobile money in Ghana. We did a bunch of things. There's not going to be enough time to talk about all of them. But first, what we're going to do is that Dr. Appiah is going to tell you some results about a poll that we did, and then I'll come in and talk a little bit about some in-depth interviews that we did with people who had used mobile money before, and then some information from industries, and then we had some university students do spending diaries so that we could track what forms of money they use for their financial transactions. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Appiah.
Thank you. Okay, as shown here, our sample size was about 250 persons, and we chose Accra as the main location with about 20 different sites. So we interviewed a minimum of about 50 individuals at each site. That was minimum. Okay. And the questions that we asked were, have you ever used mobile money before? We also asked for age, gender, or sex, and then company use, which service provider did you use the mobile money for, and what they actually use the mobile money for. As you can see from the chart, only about 15% of the sample had used mobile money. Let's go. So now here we have, okay, the mobile money users. We have categorized by what they used it for. And you can see clearly from the chart that most of them use it for receiving money. And then transfer of money, or either both, used receive money and transfer of money. And tiny proportion use it to pay water bills and so forth. On the right side here, we asked, have you ever used mobile money, or which type of service provider did you use? Okay. And here we can see that the MTN has the largest market share, followed by Tigo and then Airtel. These are the major service providers in Ghana. Then when we come to gender here, we realize that it's about gender balance in all the service providers, okay, with the exception of Airtel, where a significant proportion of male patronize this service provider. Now, type use. Across networks, receiving money was number one, as we said earlier on. So where, breaking it down by the service provider, you could see that almost all the service providers shown that receiving money was the key for the users, okay? And the next followed by receiving money and then transfer money, okay? And this is basically across all the service providers. Now we're back to gender. The total sample is basically gender balanced here. When we break them down by non-users and users, it's about the same gender balance, almost 50-50, except with MTN, except with the non-users where the male actually dominates slightly. Now, when we break them down by age, you could tell that significant proportion of the age group between 25 and 40 actually use the mobile money, followed by 26 to 40 use it, and then 19 to 25. And basically, those who do not patronize at all are the 60 and plus, and under 18 and below. Okay. So for instance, look at what 60 plus will say. As for me, I am old, I like my cash, and dealing with what I know. Maybe the young people will use it. So the young people have time to fiddle with their phones, and so far, they actually use the mobile money in Ghana currently. Okay. So I'll let Dr. Jokoto to continue.
So the data that Dr. Appiah presented could be argued to be about early adopters. We had a sample of 1250, of which 15% had used mobile money at least once. And so the question is, what makes this 15% of people that we randomly found in our sample different from the other part of our sample that had not used mobile money? What made them tick? Were there any personality characteristics that made it more likely for them to use mobile money? As a psychologist, I was interested in that. So what we did was that we conducted some in-depth interviews with 10 of mobile money users and asked them basically a whole bunch of questions to try and figure out whether it was their personality that made them more likely to use mobile money or not. And it turns out that they were not actually more technophilic, or whatever the word is, geeky was what I was trying to avoid to use, than the average population. So it wasn't that they went out of their way to have the latest mobile phone or whatnot. It was actually circumstance. Every single person said, I was in a bind, I needed to send some money to somebody urgently, and I was advised by either somebody who had used it before or the bank or the phone company to use mobile money. So in none of these situations was mobile money something they just got up and said, oh, let me try it and see what happens. It was the situation that drove them to actually use mobile money. So I thought that was very important. Okay, so that's from the consumer side. We tried in the study to get some information from industry. And we weren't able to get a lot, and all of them swore me to secrecy. And so we had to anonymize and transform the data because the different companies are very protective of their data, and nobody wanted anybody to know what their numbers were. So what we have here is the logs of the data that we actually got, not at all representative of all the transaction frequencies in Ghana over time, but we do have some from a variety of sources that I can't tell you. But as you can see, they, all the different companies and partners and stakeholders involved have argued over time that mobile money in Ghana needs time to grow, mobile money is increasing, and this graph kind of suggests that it is, but we're going to run some analysis later and try and figure out whether these slopes are actually that statistically significant or not. Okay. In addition to that, we conducted interviews with members of industry, and thematic analysis of the interviews gave rise to a bunch of themes, which I'll go over quickly. The first barrier, I guess, to mobile money uptake that was mentioned by people in the industry was the current limited utility of mobile money, in the sense that a lot of people, as you can see, it's used for money transfer, but apart from that, a few bill pays, insurance, airtime, and opportunities with second cycle institutions. There's not that much that people can currently use mobile money for. There have been discussions about having making connections to ATMs. That's not happened yet. Even employees of the telcos themselves do not use mobile money. So that tells you, something. And so there was one company that actually said they made their employees enroll for mobile money. And then I also talked to two programmers who designed software to operate on mobile money platforms, and they talked a lot about the stonewalling that they received, basically in their attempts to try and create other uses for mobile money. There was no enthusiasm from the industry to capitalize on these things, as well as from retailers. I also talked to churches to ask whether they could see mobile money being used in church donations in terms of church offertory and tithings. And in every single case, I got a very strange look, like, what are you talking about? Why would you want to, give offertory on a mobile phone? We need the physicality of cash to include in the ritual, so it's not going to happen. So as one of my interviewees said, that in order for there to be increased uptake, Ghana will have to build an entire mobile money payment ecosystem before uptake can increase. Another problem that was listed was agents, in the sense that agents who were involved in mobile money have consistently argued that their profit margins are too low. And a lot of them actually said that it was much more profitable to sell bagged water than it was to be involved in the mobile money enterprise. So why on earth would they waste their time if they cannot make a profit? So one of the issues is that affects pricing. If they increase the price, then people won't patronize it. And so that's been a barrier. But from the consumer perspective, we also found an absence of agents. There would be signs advertised, but the agents would have gone home, not come to work, not have any cash. And there were a lot of places where agents were supposed to be, but were not there anymore. So you have a lot of agents that have discontinued their services, which prevents, decreases the likelihood of people actually trying to use mobile money. There was also noted an information gap, and I think the most interesting quote that I came across was that on 2 separate occasions, a regional director sent the Bureau of National Investigation to go and arrest people from a company that had allowed people to pay their electricity bills with mobile money. And this was because of an information gap, because you are actually supposed to, and the telco companies have created platforms for electricity bills to be paid with mobile money, but there were some officials who thought that this was a scam. And so there was a lot of miscommunication, and we still found a general low level of public awareness of mobile money, even though it was slightly higher than research that were done the year before. People from the industry also thought that illiteracy was still a barrier to mobile money uptake. Another barrier, which I think may or may not be unique to Ghana, but has some implications to why Ghana's uptake is not working as well as Kenya's is that there are some regulatory issues. And so in Ghana, the telcos have to partner with banks, cannot operate individually, and the partnership still needs to work out a lot of kinks. So there was the perception, for example, that the banks were not necessarily as invested in the initiative as the telcos were, and so then there needs to be some improvement in that relationship and a better definition of what the different responsibilities are in terms of marketing, in terms of investment, in terms of the different roles that people play. One thing that was pointed out was the perception from the banking sector that to date, mobile money in Ghana actually is not a conduit for financial inclusion for now, at least not in urban Ghana South, because it is actually, it is being patronized by the bank. Now, the banks may be using it to send money to the unbanked in different parts of the country, so in that way it is providing financial access. But the perception was that in urban Ghana, in urban Accra at least, the people involved with mobile money were very likely to already have multiple bank accounts. There is also competition between the mobile money companies. There's a lot of employee poaching going on, a lot of turnover and reorganization of mobile money departments, and there have also been allegations of sabotaging, and which, you know, people kind of allege to with or without substantiation. But there was one major concern, and the quote goes, "You have all these things sitting in silos, trying to do different things with a common objective because there is no national agenda, so it is all over the place." And the point here was that the telcos will need to kind of streamline their activities and realize that even though they're competitors, they are all in this together. But there seemed to be a unanimous belief that there was potential for growth. So I got a lot of statements like, "We will get there, the building blocks are there, it will work. I believe strongly that it will work." But a recognition of needing to build trust, and a lot of telcos saying that they had plans in place, new marketing strategies, which they were not at liberty to discuss at that point. So the question for mobile money in Ghana now is this. It's sort of a chicken and egg question. It's a case of, if we build it, will they come, versus if they need it, will they use it? And I think the answer is that time will tell. But right now, here are some of the things that are going on in Ghana. So Airtel, for example, has 540,000 transactions daily. You have 13% of Tigo subscribers doing 5 to 6 mobile money transactions a month. Tigo cash float is $11 million daily, which is about $5.5 million. That's their daily cash float. MTN reports 1.5 million transactions monthly to the value of 52 million Ghana cedis, which is about $26 million. The Airtel Money cash float on a daily basis is 4 million Ghana cedis, which is $2 million. And you have 156,000 active Tigo Cash subscribers. So there are people using mobile money. It's just a question of how many, and is this going to continue, and is this going to grow? But at the same time, Ghanaians primarily still use cash. So in the spending diary that we did, we found that 157 students made 1,222 cash-based transactions, and only 2.86% of their transactions were non-cash. So as you can see, 97% of transactions in this small sample was cash-based. Ghana is still today a very much cash-based economy. So time will tell whether mobile money uptake will improve or not. And Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks to IMTFI for sponsoring the study. And I also want to say thank you to my research assistants who helped with the field work.
So our third paper, and then we will go on to questions and discussion. The third paper, the title is Delivering Cash Grants to Indigenous Peoples Through ATM and GCash Remit. And this will be offered, will both authors come up? Yeah, Anatoly Gusto, Mikra, is that the correct? Yeah, Mikra Philippines, and Emily Roque, Ateneo de Manila University. Please, welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to thank IMTFI for supporting our research. This is actually my second year here. We're very excited, maybe tense a bit, to do our presentation and share with you our initial research findings and analysis on the IPs, or the indigenous people, who are, incidentally, the beneficiaries of conditional cash grant transfer in the Philippines. So doing this work, we're actually also excited because we thought that it tackles 4 main points, or 4 key points for us. And this include indigenous people, or I'll refer to as IPs, ATM, or automated teller machine, financial technology, and lastly, money or cash. So all these 4 key points more or less echo some research questions that we've arrived at. And these are, how do IPs perceive and respond to using cash? And how do they respond to using financial technology? What are the possible changes in perceptions and behavior towards money and technology? And how do they spend, save, and utilize the cash grants given to them? So before anything else, I'd like to qualify that the research is not about assessing or looking at the effectiveness of the program, the cash grant program overall, but it's really more of a deep dive into the technology side, into the delivery channel side, whether it is somehow a hindering or a facilitating factor for the target beneficiaries. And so that's entirely the focus. Our presentation is divided as follows. I'll be giving you quickly a quick background on CCT in general. Then Emily, my colleague, will proceed with details on the program in the Philippines. She will also discuss about the findings in the research. Then I will continue the discussion with the quick points on the conclusion, as well as the takeaway lessons for us. So now, going to the background, for those of you who are not familiar with CCT, or conditional cash transfer, it's a social or a government program which provides subsidy to, say, quote unquote, the poorest of the poor in a country, and in the form of cash, not in the form of kind, as probably experienced in some countries. But this is conditional. This is contingent on certain requirements or behavior of the target beneficiary. And in most cases, it's about sending children to school or bringing them to health centers. And obviously, as you can see, the end beneficiary here really is the children as end recipients. Now, in the Philippines, what we call the CCT program is 4 Ps. 4 Ps stands for Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program. So that's the reason why it's called 4 Ps, for the 4 P letters. It's spearheaded by DSWD, or Department of Social Welfare and Development, as well as the Land Bank of the Philippines as the financial agency in charge with the disbursement. So one interesting factor about the Philippine case is that one of the target segments is on the marginalized ethnic groups, or indigenous people. And in terms of channel or delivery channel, we saw that it's a mix of both traditional or over-the-counter release of cash, as well as technology-driven ATM, and as well as mobile money like GCash. So now I'd like to turn the floor to Emily for the program details.
Thank you, Jing. Hello, everyone. Okay, pleasant afternoon. So, I'd just like to give you an overview of how, sorry, how does this go? Okay, I think I turned it off. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is a slide from the DSWD PowerPoint, okay, and it talks about the program conditionalities, okay. So how much does a beneficiary get every month, or at least every 2 months, okay? So they have two aspects, the education factor and the health factor, okay? So in order to avail the cash grant, the program has several conditions. For education, if you're a parent, you have to make sure that your children have an 85% rate of attending classes. If they do, they get 300 pesos, or around $7 per child. Okay, so if you have 3 children, which is the maximum per household, you can get a maximum of 900 pesos per month, or $21 or so. Okay, so that's the education aspect. But if your child or children do not have a rate of 85% in attending classes, for example, they have only 50% or even 1% of attending classes, or they do not attend classes frequently, the beneficiary or the household do not get anything in the education side. Okay, so we go to the health aspect. For health, each household has to complete 5 requirements. So the first is that the mother has to get a pre- or postnatal checkup. The second is that the children aged 0 to 2 have to be vaccinated. The third is that the children aged 3 to 5 have to visit the Barangay Health Center, or the BHS, basically the Community Health Center. And then the parents have to attend a family development session, or an FDS, and the children need to be dewormed. Okay? So the SWD has an all or nothing clause, which means that if the beneficiary do not fulfill any of these requirements, they do not get anything. But if they do complete all these requirements, they get 500 pesos, or $12 per household. Okay? So the maximum amount that the household gets is 1,400 per month, or $35 a month, around that money. But in reality, the program gives out cash grants every 2 months. So it's supposed to be every month, but the SWD has set it up for every 2 months. Okay, so beneficiaries get a maximum of 2,800 pesos, or around $70 every 2 months. Okay. Okay, so as Jing discussed earlier, the actors that for the CCT, or the 4Ps program, are the DSWD, or the Department of Social Welfare and Development. So they're the implementing government agency for the 4Ps. And then we have the Land Bank. It's also a government bank, or state bank, and they handle all the disbursements of the cash grants. Okay, and of course, we have the beneficiaries, which are mostly women, and for this study belong to indigenous groups. Okay, so from here on, well, I've been referring to Social Welfare and Development as DSWD, and then Land Bank and beneficiaries as IPs. Okay. Okay, this is the actual process of disbursement. So this is what happens on the ground. It's kind of like the sub-actors. Okay. So this, so it starts with the DSWD's national office, coordinating with the regional office down here. Okay, and then the regional office will coordinate with the municipal link, or the ML. The ML is the assigned person, or the staff per municipality. And then the ML, or the municipal link, coordinates with the PL, or the parent leaders, who handle or are directly in contact with the beneficiaries. Okay, so the parent leaders will inform beneficiaries when and where the payout will be. So beneficiaries are divided into 2 kinds of payouts: the over-the-counter, OTC, and ATM. And this is mainly the recurring theme of our study. So basically, our research objective is really to compare the experiences of IP beneficiaries according to the type of delivery mechanism and disbursement. Okay, so we have two, the OTC and the ATM. For the OTC, it's mostly applicable in hard-to-reach areas, especially in municipalities with no banks. So it's now PhilPost who handles the disbursements in specific areas, especially in the far-flung areas. But before, it used to be GCash. It's where the cash grants are sent through mobile phones. But we face, again, the problem of the inavailability of network signals. So, and also GCash has higher transaction costs than PhilPost, so this ability shifted to PhilPost. And for the ATM, it's only applicable in the lowlands where banks and ATMs are present. Beneficiaries get an electronic cash card. So they have a card, but it's really a cash card, which means that they can withdraw, but they cannot deposit. They cannot deposit anything in it. And it cannot be used for payment for goods and services. Okay, so the institutions for this are land bank, and sometimes it's the first consolidated bank when there's no land bank in the area or in the municipality. Okay, so for the method, so we did a survey of 60 beneficiaries, so 30 per type of disbursement, so 30 for ATM, 30 for OTC. We also conducted FGDs with both males and females. So it's the wives who are the beneficiaries, but we also talked with their husbands. We did this because it's also interesting what the males think about the CCT program, which are really more focused on women and children. Okay. And also we had key informant interviews with the disability staff, the land bank officials, and so on. Okay, for our research site, it's a research site is basically in Palawan in southern Philippines. Because the mode of payment is dependent on the situation of the area, like whether there's a bank or not in the municipality, it actually led us to interview two groups of IPs. So actually we have two groups, the lowlands and the upland IPs. The lowland IPs are in Brooks Point and have both ATM and OTC. And the upland IPs who are living in Rizal and have OTC as the mode of disbursement. Okay. So basically, the profile of our respondents are so mostly female, and then the average age is 36 years old. Majority had no schooling, and the mode of transportation to collect or get the CCT money is in Brooks Point or in the lowland. It's a tricycle or motorcycle. And in Rizal, in the upland, it's mostly by foot. Okay, so we go to the findings. We had a lot of findings, but we had to get only the most interesting points for us. Okay, so here's the summary table of the experiences of IPs. Okay, above this you can see videos or moving images of how the areas look like. Okay, so for the Brooks Point is in the lowlands and Rizal is in the upland. Okay, and actually we had two modes of payment, right? In Brooks Point, so it's ATM and OTC, and Rizal is OTC. Okay, so because the sites in Brooks Point are near the main town, it takes them 1 hour. It takes the beneficiaries 1 hour, but in Rizal it takes them 3 hours to get to the payout venue. The mode of transportation for the two sites, it's mostly tricycle and motorcycle. But in Rizal, it's 93% go by foot, and surprisingly 7% have a motorcycle, and some ride in the truck. But we'll discuss it later. Okay. So the average transportation cost in Brooks, it's 85 pesos or around $2? Okay, and then 50 pesos or around $1. But in Rizal, when they ride the truck, they have to pay 300 pesos or around $7. And some complaints or issues of the beneficiaries is that, for instance, in Brooks, especially in the ATM type of disbursement, there's a long line. They are exposed to heat and rain because there's no shade in the area. It takes a whole day for most of them. Sometimes they're already there at 7 a.m., sometimes at 3 a.m. The line finishes at 3 p.m. or sometimes if the ATM malfunctioned, they go home at 10 p.m. Okay. In Brooks Point, the OTC experience there is that they have faster lines due to the DSWD staff checking grants manually, and the venue has shade in the roof, and it takes only 3 to 5 hours. But in Rizal, it's very different. The complaint of the beneficiaries is that it's very far from the community. It takes a whole day. Delays happen to staff delivering grants due to weather. Because the PhilPost staff, they have to go up the mountains in order to deliver the actual cash grants. Okay. So another interesting point that we found is that in the ATM in the ATM machine in Brooks Point, there's a sign that says announcement dispensing 500 and 1,000 peso bills only. Okay. 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 So the maximum is 2,800. For example, it's 2,800, and the ATM will only dispense 2,500. So 1,000, 1,500. And this is you have something left. It's 300. But the beneficiary can only get it when the next cash grant has leftovers again, amounting to 500, 1,000, 1,500, and so on. In a way, they are saving and attesting to feeling happy when they get a bigger amount in the next payout. So in a sense, they stumbled upon a savings experience already. Okay, so okay. So there are also challenges. Okay, I'll just select this so we can go to the conclusion. Okay, so beneficiaries don't know actually how to perform the ATM transactions. Okay, only parent leaders were taught, and they're very much afraid to use the card because it might be captured by the ATM and they can't get the cash grant anymore. Okay, and then another interesting note is that especially in the uplands, OTC has several challenges. They do not easily trust outsiders and programs. So there are rumors that, for example, at the end, the CCT program is not a real program. Others said that if we join, this WD will put tattoos in our organs. Okay, so there are rumors like that going around. Okay, so it's not easy to trust. And then changes in the cash flow. Rizal, they in the upland, okay, originally they barter, and later on, when the CCT comes in, okay, and when they have no more cash, they go back to barter. But in Brooks Point, they have cash, and then the cash comes in, CCT cash comes in, and when they don't have cash anymore, they engage in credit. Okay, maybe we should go to the, yeah.
Okay. In the interest of time, maybe we can, I guess we can just share the PowerPoint presentation, but anyway, for the conclusion and recommendation, just quickly, we have general conclusion points and then specific points. So on the first point, we saw that the CCT introduced the concept of money to some IP beneficiaries, particularly on the upland, who are more familiar with the in-kind transactions. Number two, there is evidence of change in the way they perform their financial transactions, as Emily described a while ago, from barter to cash and then from cash to credit. The number three and four, obviously CCT is about spending or consumption. And on the first part, on the positive part, we saw households actually spending the money for the intended purpose or intended use, which is about education and about health. But on the negative side, there's some sort of leakage, for lack of a better term. Leakage because of three more or less factors. Fungibility, because cash obviously can be spent on other items besides health and education-related expenses. Liquidity, because sometimes, as you saw in the ATM machine, there is limited number of bills available to them, whether it's 100 or it's 500 bills. And sometimes merchants find it hard to exchange or give exact change, and that's also related to divisibility. And then, as you can also imagine, for them, cash is not as important as we probably consider. As we put cash in a vault, they put cash in just a plastic bag. It's really more of a medium of exchange and not really more of a store of value. Saving cash for other purposes or other needs is still very uncommon. And then for conclusion recommendation, just quickly on the following. We see that access to cash cards has not translated to formal savings, but there is a good sign that it can lead into that. Alternative delivery mechanisms might function better if beneficiaries are taught on how to use them. On CCT programs being transformative, direction should be shifted from being spending focused to maybe spending and savings focused. And partners which can provide complementary financial services should be tapped. Lessons learned, understand and respect user context. Beneficiary should be considered maybe a we instead of an I. Apply and use delivery mechanisms that are simple, accessible, and easy to use. Identify not only the client, but also the influencer who can connect and educate the user or the beneficiary. And lastly, if we consider what CCT is, I think in terms of introducing innovation, it should be like learning to dance or even dancing Gangnam Style, wherein people can easily perform it, people can easily learn it. So with that, thank you very much.
So we have a good 35 minutes for discussion. I'm going to intervene in a way I wasn't supposed to, and since we had an extra 5 minutes from the first panel, I'm going to ask a question, which I'm not really supposed to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, because there was a little bit of time, so maybe there was one point I wanted to ask you to expand on a little bit, and then we're going to have, like we had in the previous sessions, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and the mic will come to you. So the first question I had on the one question I'll raise here. One, I was interested to hear a little bit more about social activism, social mobilization, and what that meant to you in this context, because that's something that you don't raise, and I was wondering whether the methodology was like action research or what the getting involved in the networks meant, and and how this was social activism, and how that related to some of the cost issues as well that you were dealing with some of the people that you were working with, of the relative costs of different programs. So you don't have to answer. Just I'm giving you
So first I'll share my experience of social mobilization, and probably Manny can also share her experience. For me, when we first went to the study area, we went there and we started talking about the benefits of having bank accounts. We started with why they don't have bank accounts, everything. So we had to keep telling them about mobile money and benefits of opening bank accounts, savings, and again going back to them, talking about the same thing, encouraging them to open bank accounts. So we were looking at the behavioral aspect, like to what level this intervention is needed for them to go to bank account or to open bank accounts. So for us, at least what I understood from my experience, mobilization was to continuously involving them in the process, talking about the benefit, understanding why they are not ready for like whatever product we were talking about, and also trying to overcome any constraint from their point as well as from service provider point. So that was what my experience as a social mobilizer, and Manny, you can also share.
The context is, it is more action research. And rickshaw pullers are a very large group. Estimated numbers are 6 lakhs, that is 600,000 people to 900,000 pullers in Delhi alone. Now, so when we chose a sample area, it was an illegal slum settlement. There are about 2,000 to 3,000 pullers, where there are a large number of clusters of pullers from different states or communities who take hire rickshaws from different contractors. Now, how do we start? To mobilize them, social mobilization meant, our sample size was 50 pullers. But how do we get the 50 pullers? So when we started off in the slum cluster, we started with one set of people we introduced, and so it was essentially to get to know them, tell them about why we have come, what is our intention, and how we would like to have hand-holding support, and then enlist them. So in the action research, enlisting them and identifying the target number of pullers was social mobilization as such for us. Is that
yes.
Fine?
So now can we go on? Should we get like 3 questions, and then you can say who it's directed to? Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, and please identify yourselves before you ask the question.
Hi, I'm Jenna Burrell. I'm with the School of Information at UC Berkeley, and I have a question for the team who studied mobile money transfer in Ghana. But first, a comment. I think it's really unusual and always exciting to me to see people look at sort of disinterest and non-use of technology, and I'd like to see more of that in the world. So thanks for a really interesting body of work trying to explain the disinterest in mobile money in Ghana. I've also spent quite a bit of time in Ghana myself and have studied market women and have similarly found what you found about lack of the use of these services. And so my question or my comment is about whether you've started to think about looking at M-Pesa as a comparison, because there's actually a lot of work on the success of M-Pesa that I think might help you unravel the non-success of money transfer in Ghana. And in particular, a lot of work by Olga Moroshinsky. So, you know, there are a couple of things that I heard you talking about. Some mention of that perhaps the lack of different services was the reason why mobile money wasn't popular. I think in the case of M-Pesa, it wasn't necessary to have a whole array of services to make that a successful service. Just simply moving money from A to B was key. Also, I'm wondering if you've thought about patterns of urban to rural remittances, and whether there's maybe a difference in kind of the urbanization of Ghana compared to urbanization in Kenya, and maybe there's an explanation there. And then another explanation I've heard for the success of M-Pesa in Kenya, this is the last thing I'm going to say, is that part of it had to do with brand trustworthiness of Safaricom and the fact that that service was really pushed by a single provider that invested a lot of energy into it and spreading it out into rural areas.
Great. I think what we're going to do before we go right to answers is we'll get 2 or 3 questions out, and then we'll have the answers. Yes, please. Is the mic on? Are you going to circulate? Okay. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Eduardo from Brazil. I'd like to make a question for the Ghana case. First of all, it was all the 3 cases that were presented was really nice. My question is I don't know if I missed something, but I could see clearly the point of view of the users, the mobile operators, banks, but I couldn't clearly see what is the point of view of the central bank or the regulator responsible for that. So I'd like to see, to hear from you, what do you think, or what's the point of view of the regulator? What they think about that? What are they moving to do something to change the situation?
Okay. We're going to take just one more question until we move on. So yeah, thanks you guys. Thank you.
Hi, Gustav Peebles, the New School. I had a very simple question because I have a topic that I think is that I'm interested in is connectivity. So if we think of the transfer of the money and mobile money as no different than, say, highways and cars and buses and what have you. A highway can either be a toll highway that's built by a private company and individuals pay to get on it, or it can be subsidized by the government. So my question is, for Emily and Anatoly, I was just curious, for the $7 transfer or the $12 transfer, is that the exact amount of money that the end user receives, or is the toll for transferring the money something that they pay or that the state subsidizes?
Okay, these are great questions. So why don't we move down the table, yeah, and then you can start, yeah, and then we'll move this way. Yeah. Go ahead. You can speak from there.
Okay. Sorry, I thought we were going this way. No, never mind. Sorry. All right, so the first question was about differences between Ghana and M-Pesa. We've thought about it a lot. I and Dr. Mensah have thought about it a lot. But the problem is that there are just too many differences, and so it's not an easy comparison. One of the major differences between Ghana and Kenya is the regulatory restrictions. And so because you have two different countries, somewhat similar histories, but there's so many differences that the comparison just isn't fair. Ghana is not exactly the same as Kenya. You have Safaricom starting without having to partner with banks, and in Ghana you have these partnerships which have really shaped the direction in which mobile money has been marketed and adopted and thought of as an option. And so that's one difference. CGAP did a study looking at the urban to rural transmissions, and that even though there was previous assumptions that most of the remittances to Ghana were from outside the country to inside the country, the CGAP study actually indicated that that may not necessarily be the only source of remittances. So it's not clear at this point whether the Ghanaian remittance direction is more towards, you know, from outside in, but there is enough room within the country itself for city to city or city to village remittances to make it similar to Kenya. The second question, and then the other thing about brand trust, that's a tricky one. I mean, all the telco companies have loyal customers, even though most people own more than one SIM card because, you know, everybody needs a backup in case one doesn't work and all that. But most people do seem to trust the telcos, and so I don't think that would be an issue as to why they wouldn't trust the brand. It's more of an issue of not trusting cashlessness yet, is what I think it is. To the second question about the central bank, I did interview one person from the central bank who seemed to have a relatively positive perception of the future of mobile money, but also recognition of the fact that there were a lot of obstacles, which included fine-tuning the partnerships with the banks and the telcos. And also you actually there was discussion about the possibility of the telcos themselves creating financial institutions in order to kind of get around the regulatory restriction. Because the idea is that if you have an independent bank and a telco company trying to partner with something, if the bank is not that invested in it, it may not work as well. But if the telco creates a financial institution for the sole purposes of managing this relationship, then clearly you'd have a better working relationship. So there's some discussion about, okay, here are the rules, but this could be a legal way to navigate the problems with the mandated banking partnerships at the moment. And so the regulatory body is aware of the problems, but there are reasons why these rules were put in place. And so I don't think that they're considering changing the rules, even though the telco companies would be completely thrilled if the rules were changed.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but our understanding is if you're asking about whether the amount that we mentioned is the exact amount that is received by the beneficiary, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, who pays for
yeah.
the transfer of money? The state?
Yeah. Actually, the answer there would be a yes and a no. A yes, because on face value, they get it, the amount as stated, but the problem is the leak or the leakage that's happening somewhere around, along the way. I mean, transportation going to the payout site is not shouldered by the government or by the municipal government. As we said, if it's in an ATM, it cannot be withdrawn entirely if it's not divisible by 500 or 1,000 bills. And so there's like a delay of the portion of the money that is intended for the target beneficiary. Thank you.
Okay, so next questions. Let's get another round. Do we have the mic? Hands up so we can see who else will. Okay, go ahead, and then, okay. 2. Do we have a third? All right.
This is for Mani and Deepti on your research on cycle rickshaw pullers. So you mentioned tying the unique ID, the UID project to the accounts and the money transfer. I know there's been a lot of concern in India about the privacy considerations to do with UID, and you also mentioned that you were working with what could be considered a vulnerable population, especially since they live in a illegal settlement, as you mentioned. So I was wondering if you have been thinking about future privacy concerns about how, if they do manage to get UID cards, how that could possibly have some repercussions for their living in a illegitimate settlement or in any other way?
Thanks, Janaki. This is, we are working with migrants who are from different states, especially from Madhya Pradesh, the slum cluster we are working with. The idea of getting them a UID card is only because they do not have any proper KYC norm documentation, which is essential for getting them a bank account. Now, if you have to get them a bank account, they need this identification. Now, the only way for these homeless pullers is through the UID route. If they get the Aadhaar cards, that enables them to get they become eligible to get a bank account. Not that it actually happens on the ground, because the RBI's proactive policy on financial inclusion is there. But how each bank interprets on the ground is very different. Some of the banks do accept it. It's not mandatory that UID has to be accepted as a KYC one, but there has been a push by the government to ensure that this is going to be used. So that is the reason we use this one. We did not think about the privacy considerations. It's only as an identification document.
Right, but I was wondering if you think in the future that it might have some repercussions. I understand why you used it, but I'm just wondering, do you feel like it might have some repercussions in the future that you would need to plan around?
Plus, it's a voluntary, the way the respondents who come with us to open UID, we tell them about what unique identification this card is. So till now, I mean, to be very honest, we haven't thought about that. And it's voluntary. Like, we tell them, they come, if they need ID card, they take it. We don't force them. So actually, we haven't thought about it. It's the first time actually we're having that.
May I add also one to this? Many of the pullers want a UID Aadhaar card because they do not have an identification card. So when they can get it and enables them to get a bank account, they willingly accept it.
So we have 2 more questions now. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I have to ask the last presenter. See, the model which you have you introduced, I mean, I just want to know when it was introduced in your country, and before introduction and after introduction, what change in terms of penetration you found? I mean, is it positive or negative? One. Second, and you said that education and health is the criteria to pass on subsidy in form of cash to the bank of these people. But is it, I mean, there is no criteria of identifying these people with respect to income? I mean, they are just doing passing this subsidy to everybody in that country? Or is it something they are targeting some particular section of the society? One. And second, if it is targeting a certain section of the society, then my another question is that you said education and children, but there are some, some poor people are there, and they are not, I mean, they don't have children of of that age group, and there is no, no particular compulsion with respect to education because everybody has surpassed all that at that particular, that particular stage. Then to whom they are passing on that subsidy? And because in India, the same model they are planning to apply, but targeting on the poor because to stop the middleman leakages, which is happening with respect to subsidies. But now, I mean, though it has, your model also have leakages with respect to ATM is not providing the amount, full amount to them. But another thing, the third part of this, I want to know from you, because it's very interesting, that 200 rupees, if the amount is 2,200 rupees and the person can receive only, can encash only 2,000 rupees, then I mean, are they providing some interest on this 200 rupees? Because it's something, money is something which is very time bound. It is very contextual. So it is lying with them unused, so are they providing interest or not? So these are the three questions.
If you don't mind holding, we'll get one more question on. Yeah. We have a question right here. While you're walking around, I'll ask another brief question here, which has to do with the paper from the Philippines. Again, who defines an indigenous person? And then, okay.
Should I ask before
Go
the
ahead,
answer?
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the Ghanaian team that the differences between Kenya and Ghana are too big differences, and therefore comparisons becomes a problem. But even inside Kenya, we have other problems. Although M-Pesa has been very successful, other mobile money services have not been very successful, particularly mobile banking. All the products that have been introduced in the market have refused or have been incapable of scaling. That's a big problem. We have the example of M-Pesa in-house, but we still can't get other mobile money products working. So I really sympathize with anybody who tries to learn anything from Kenya, because we can't even learn it from ourselves. But when I look at this mobile banking business, I feel that, I don't know what the panel feels, but I think there are very many differences between the telcos and the banks. And I think they don't seem to agree from what I've seen. And there seems to be a lot of mistrust between them. But at the same time, looking at the products that are in the market, I get a feeling that we haven't gotten it right. It is like we have a solution looking for a problem. In the case of M-Pesa, it was very clear. There was a big need of money transfer. But at the moment, the products I've seen in the market, they're basically solutions looking for a problem. I don't know what you think. Perhaps we need to go back to the design stage. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, thank you for your questions. There are a lot of questions. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. So thank you for your questions again. I think the program started at least 3 to 4 years ago in the Philippines, and you were talking about the criteria. Actually, the health and education is not really the criteria. It's the conditions that need to be developed. Okay, but the criteria really is that the selection, they're selecting the households which are below the poverty threshold in the Philippines. Okay, and it's only for households with a maximum of 3 children. So it can be a mother, father, and then 1 child, or at least 3 children. So it's below the poverty threshold. Okay. What else is? Sorry. What?
On the question about, I think on the children, when there are situations wherein children are no longer qualified, or say the household apparently doesn't have any more children to support to, whether it is transferred or not. I'm not really sure about the details on that, but we can probably check. Do you know that?
I think they have like a system for checking and updating whether this beneficiaries are still qualified. Okay, so if their children have reached the age limit or have graduated in the program, so maybe they have the disability has a way of checking it. Okay, and also they also have a way of they also have a system for those who have gone above the poverty threshold. So they have a system for that. Okay. And then you have interest rate. For the ATM dispensing or not dispense or dispensing specific bills, there is no interest acquired by the bank. So it's just that they get it less in one time, and then in another time they get more than what they have, what they should be getting. Okay. And sorry. What else?
Regarding the change in penetration rate, unfortunately, our study isn't really focused on that side. I mean, during the qualitative research that we've done, there are signs that indicate that there is, in fact, some positive change as to, for instance, consumption resulting in higher enrollment rates or better performance in school, better health conditions of the kids. But I wouldn't really say that it's definitive because that it's not really the focus of our research. What else?
Okay. I'm going to then, we have one, were there other pending responses? And I want to we'll encourage everyone, if you have further conversations from your experiences, to continue that in the breaks. We had one question I do want to take that's from panelist to panelist, and so please, that will be the last one, and then we'll move on to the next panel.
Actually, I just want to add something after listening to the Ghana experience. In India also, we have very similar experience. In terms of, we did another study, not IMTFS study, to understand why the business correspondent model, the mobile money, is not getting so popular in India. And when we interviewed the agents, the problems, whatever my colleagues over there found, was very similar to what we found. Like profit margin is very low for the agents. And agents are not being trained, and they don't see the incentive of running this product for the poor. So at least in India, I just want to share that even though the focus is on using of business correspondent model for financing inclusion, the focus has been more on opening of bank accounts than the usage of the accounts itself. So I think I don't know if it is the same problem in other countries, but I think the definition of financial inclusion probably has to be changed. Just opening bank accounts is probably not enough. Maybe how people if people are using or not, I think probably focus should be more on uses of these bank accounts. And if something like that happened, then probably the uptake of mobile money might increase, at least from India perspective. Until unless it's just opening of bank accounts, as long as people have bank accounts, people are financially included. If that is the principle, then I'm not sure if that will help in the long. That's my statistics.
Thank you. So with that, we will wrap it up and thank our panelists and the audience for a great set of questions, and we'll move on to further discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful, and thank you to Julia for facilitating that excellent panel. I wanted, before the break, to call up Cliff and Richard and company. Come on up. We are co-sponsoring a conference that's going to take place the 12th and 13th of March 2013 in Ghana, together with the Ghana Technology University College, on mobile money uptake in Ghana. So I wanted these guys who are organizing it to just show their faces and say a couple words.
Thank you very much, Bill. Yes, I was going to call Abner. Now, guys, we need your help. How about that? You all have this, what I call it, folder. All right. Now, open it, and then see right in there. You're going to find something that says mobile money payments in Ghana. You're going to see Ghana Technology University College, and a call for papers. All right. Now, as I was listening to Vivian, and she was giving all those results, I could just see the visions in my eyes and what was actually happening in Ghana. And I know the Kenyans are saying that they pity anybody who wants to follow them or learn from them, but we need you at the table. Oh, Kenyans, where are you? Habari.
They're all looking away.
Habari yako. We need you at the table, Kenyans. We need the Indians at the table. We need our brothers and sisters from Albania and Armenia and Philippines. And,
There's Albania.
everywhere. In the United States and our friends on the internet, we need you. We need you to participate. Please show up. Send in your papers. We're still taking papers. Just imagine a scene, a scenario where you are presenting and discussing these ideas right in the presence of the telcos. Just imagine that. In the presence of the telcos. Telcos are present. Retailers are showing up, they're present. You have consumers, customers also present. Government regulators also present. We want to bring the relevant stakeholders all together for us to brainstorm. We want to keep this real and practical and then find real solutions to these barriers that are impeding Ghanaians from adopting. And probably the lessons learned, the takeaways could be applicable to other countries as well. So please show up. Thank you so much for this time.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, God. There's a question. Freshman has a question.
If you have questions, see me. See us.
I have seen the corporate paper, but it requires papers which is written in the areas of Ghanaian business culture. How do other people from the rest of the world participate who do not know about the Ghanaian?
Well, like I said in passing, would like to learn from your experiences. You see opportunities that says that at the bottom it says proposals for a panel discussion. So you could come in with an idea for a panel discussion, actually giving us ideas about how you overcame your barriers, your difficulties, and probably we might have some commonalities in the issues we're discussing. And through the brainstorming, we could find solutions to these things. So although our call states a few guidelines, we are not restricting you. As long as you're in the business of financial inclusion, we need you at the table. We need you at the table. Thank you so much.
Great. Yep. It's excellent. Thank you. And the information on the call, I think, is also currently posted on the IMTFI website. And there's also copies of this flyer, extra copies back in the back table. I also wanted to just acknowledge that we have had pretty phenomenal viewership of the live stream. There's been over 190 people logging in. Usually there's around 30 people at a time who are watching from all over the place. We've had greetings sent to us from Ayman in India and from Surimivan Kolambaji in Sri Lanka, and I know other past recipients of IMTFI awards have been listening in as well. So we just wanted to acknowledge them.